He could have walked away. In the garden, there were no soldiers yet. There were no chains. There was no crowd, no cross. Just a garden, quiet, still, and Jesus alone. He brought his closest friends, Peter, James, and John, and he'd asked them to stay and watch and pray. And they fell asleep. And in that moment, he could have just left. No one would have questioned him. No one would have stopped him. No one even awake to notice. He could have walked out of the garden and let the world face what they deserved. But he didn't. What's happening here in this story is not weakness. It's an actual decision. Jesus begins to give himself. He goes a little further in the garden and he falls to the ground. He prays, "My Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me." Jesus knows what's coming, not just the physical suffering that is about to happen, but something deeper. Not just the cross, but the cup he is about to drink. Throughout Scripture, the cup is a picture, not of blessing, although sometimes it is, but often of judgment, of God's righteous response to sin. The weight of everything that's broken, everything evil, everything that separates us from God. In the Psalms, it speaks of the cup in the Lord's hand being poured out in judgment. In the prophets, the cup is described as the cup of wrath that the nations must drink. A cup of wrath, a cup of justice, a cup that no one wants to drink. And now that same cup is placed before Jesus. And here in the garden, Jesus looks at the cup and he trembles because this is a cup he does not deserve. This is the cup we deserve. In that moment, he faces a real choice to step away, to let humanity face the consequence of its own sin, to let judgment fall where it belongs. But instead, he prays the very words he's taught his disciples to pray, "Your will be done." As we hear these words, we have to ask, why would someone choose this path? Why not just run? Only love. His love is so great, he chose to stay. Jesus is giving himself. And he didn't just do this once, not even twice, but 3 times the scriptures tell us that he returned to the place to pray. The same surrender each time, the same yielding, the same choice before him. And each time stepping back into the full weight of it and choosing the Father's will again. It's not just a rushed, okay, in the spare of the moment I'll do this. It's a deliberate, spoken slowly, honestly, again and again, I will. And this moment shows us something very clearly. There is no other way. If there had been another way to save humanity, another path, another solution, perhaps another option, Jesus would not have had to go to the cross. The Father would not have sent him. But there was no other way. And that changes how we see this moment. This is not something out of his control. This is not something he was trapped into, forced into by the soldiers around him. This is something he is choosing freely, willingly. This is Jesus giving himself. Jesus said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." It's such a familiar verse to us. We sing it so often with happy songs, often with joy. And the truth is there that no one comes to the Father except him. And here in the garden we see exactly why. I am the way, the truth, the life. Because Jesus is stepping into, what he's stepping into is substitution. He takes what is ours so we can receive what is his. We swap places. This is the gift. Scripture tells us God made him who knew no sin to be sin for us, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. He became sin, and we become the righteousness of God. He takes the cup so it doesn't have to be ours. And in that exchange, we begin to understand how big this moment is, because the measure of his agony is actually the measure of his love. If you've ever wondered, how much does God actually love me? Have a look at the garden. Look at the wrestling. Look at the sorrow. Look at the surrender. He's not being forced here. He's not being overpowered. He's choosing. He's not in front of a crowd. It's not a moment of pressure. In the quiet, when no one is watching, when he could still walk away, he stays. And then something shifts. He stands, not because it's got easier, not because the cost has disappeared, but because the decision is made. The hour has come. Rise, let us go. He doesn't wait to be taken. He steps forward. Jesus is giving himself.
You'll never take me alive, coppers. It's a cliche of gangster movies. The bad guy is trapped with no hope, and he goes down fighting, killing, taking as many of the enemy with him. It's what the jolly swagman cries out as he is surrounded by the troopers in Waltzing Matilda. You'll never take me alive. But not Jesus. He does not run from the garden, and he does not resist arrest. One of his disciples does. Peter draws a sword and goes on the attack. And perhaps this is exactly what Judas, the betrayer, wants. A violent confrontation with the authorities that launches a coup and a rebellion and a civil war. But Jesus is not having any of it. Jesus says, put your sword back in its place, for all who draw the sword will die by the sword. Do you not think I cannot call on my Father, and he will at once put at my disposal more than 12 legions of angels? But how then would the scriptures be fulfilled that say it must happen in this way? Jesus gives himself up to arrest when he could have called on 120,000 angels to come to his defense. Instead, he agrees to go quietly. Jesus is giving himself. He's then put on trial, brought before the authorities and questioned and accused. Much has been written about this trial by scholars, and it's not exactly legal. There are lots of things being done here that are against the Jewish law. Proper procedure and etiquette and rules of evidence. Plenty of things over which you could shout, objection! Or slam your hand on the table and say, this isn't right. And shake your fist and call for a mistrial. But Jesus does none of that. We read, then the high priest stood up and said to Jesus, are you not going to answer? What is this testimony these men are bringing against you? But Jesus remained silent. Jesus gives up his right to a fair trial. He agrees to be condemned unjustly. Jesus is giving himself. And then he's taken to the Roman governor for execution. It's part of the imperial occupation that the Jewish leaders are not allowed to kill people. The Romans have a monopoly on violence. Caesar is Lord, and all must bow and scrape at his magnificence. The governor's not really convinced that this man is deserving of death and questions the trial and the verdict, and then he turns to Jesus to see if he will appeal to Caesar's representative for mercy. He asks only about the accusation that the Romans care about. The governor said to Jesus, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Because only Caesar is king. Only imperial rule matters. And Jesus says, "You have said so." We read on. When he was accused by the chief priests and elders, he gave no answer. Then Pilate asked him, "Don't you hear the testimony they're bringing against you?" But Jesus made no reply, not even to a single charge, to the great amazement of the governor. Jesus does not deny the charges. He remains silent. He makes no plea to Roman mercy or to Caesar's kindness. He gives up any appeal and accepts his fate. Jesus is giving himself. The governor does not really want to kill him, so he turns to the crowd. After all, if this Jesus has popular support and is sent to be crucified, it may start a rebellion, a war, more unnecessary violence. And so the crowd is given a choice: Barabbas, the rebel and the murderer, or Jesus, who is called the Messiah. "Which of the two do you want me to release to you?" asked the governor. "Barabbas," they answered. "What shall I do then with Jesus who is called the Messiah?" Pilate asked. They all answered, "Crucify him." "Why? What crime has he committed?" asked Pilate. But they shouted all the louder, "Crucify him!" Jesus' life is given to the people, and the people choose death. Jesus is giving himself.
And then we arrive at the cross. The nails go in, the wood is raised, the sky grows dark, the crowd watches, some mock, some weep, most don't understand. And from the outside, it looks like defeat, it looks like loss, it looks like everything has just gone wrong. But what we see is not defeat, not tragedy. It's a gift. For God so loved the world that he gave his only Son. It's a gift. Everything we've seen, the garden, the arrest, the trial, has been leading here. Not something to be taken, but something freely given. His body given, his blood poured out, his life laid down, not forced, not stolen, not out of control, given. And even here on the cross, Jesus is giving himself. He takes what is ours so we can receive what is his. He takes our sin, our failure, our guilt, and in its place, he gives righteousness, forgiveness. He gives life. And at the center of it all is love. Not distant love, not abstract love. Love that stays, love that chooses, love that gives. And so today, we don't come to the cross to analyze it. We don't come to the cross to try and figure it out, to have all the answers. We come to receive the gift freely given, because everything we need is in that gift. Today we come to the cross to receive what Jesus has given.